Okay. Charles Ogren, go by Chuck. And I spent 20 years in the Air Force, retired lieutenant colonel. Started off always wanting to fly, primarily, I guess, because I had uncles that flew airplanes in World War II and after that in Korea. But had a chance, was supposed to go to West Point because that's where my grandfather had gone and the people before him, but they came along with a new academy called the Air Force Academy. So I lobbed onto that and said, I think that's where I need to go if I want to fly. And so applied and was accepted. 4 years there and graduated in 1963. From there, pilot training, flying F-4s, combat tour in Vietnam and Thailand, actually, flying up in North Vietnam primarily, in Laos. And then got a consecutive overseas tour to Germany, which was 3 years in the F-4Ds. And finally, then kind of had a choice of either going to B-52s or going back to Vietnam. And so I raised my hand at the academy and said, gee, are you guys interested in an instructor? The Aero Department was. They sent me back and got my master's degree, in fact, here at the University of Arizona. And then went up there and taught for 3 years. And then had to get jet qualified again in T-33s so I could get back into fighters, and had to raise my hand to volunteer to go back to Vietnam, even though the war was over or winding down rapidly at that time. But anyway, that's what we did. So went back over there for another almost 10 months, sitting alert. Came back from there to Luke Air Force Base as an IP ops officer, staff officer there. And then spent the last 4 years in the Pentagon in the missile requirements business. So made a full career, got a degree, which was very handy. And actually being in the missile requirements business is also what then allowed me to get a job after I retired with then Hughes Aircraft in their air-to-air missile business. So that worked out well. And then spent 30 years there developing missiles for the services.
And so we'll hit the highlight numbers, the football numbers here. So a total of how many years in the Air Force?
20 years in the Air Force, plus 4 in the Academy, which we don't get to count.
And how many different aircraft? As major systems?
Well, T-37, T-38 in pilot training, F-4Cs, Ds, and Es. And then when I was at the Academy, I flew the T-41, teaching cadets how to fly, and then T-33 in their motivational ride program. So those, that's rides in other airplanes, but not checked out.
Checked out, okay. The Form 8 in the
right.
In those ones. Well, let me go right to the heart of it, of what motivated you before the Academy. I mean, you don't just show up and say, I think I'd go to the Academy. And you mentioned West Point potentially too. What put the spark in your heart to be in the military? What made you say, I'd like to do that instead of Stanford, all these data, whatever?
I was preordained to do that. On my mother's side of the family, her dad, my grandfather, was the class of 1915 out of West Point. That's the class that the stars fell upon, Eisenhower's class. And he actually served his war stint over in China, and came back civil engineers, and ended up retiring major general as the head of the engineer corps. He had 2 sons, 2 daughters. The 2 sons both went to West Point, but then went into the Air Force to fly, Air Corps and Air Force for the second one. My mother married an Army officer, dentist, and her sister married another Air Force officer. So, and here I was, number 1 grandson. So I think I'm probably it was it was in the genes. There was no pressure, no force, any way, shape, or form. But that's what I assumed I was going to do, and just go fly.
And so when you were a young boy, who were your heroes as a young boy? Were you a Cowboys and Indians kind of guy or a space patrol kind of guy? Who did you look up to? Or none of those, just your own relatives.
Well, actually, I'm not sure I even remember having anything that particularly shined. I can remember playing with the soldiers down in the out in the woods and all that sort of stuff. But no specific heroes or anything other than my uncles, I think, at that time.
And so, it's so exciting for me to meet someone who was able to go to the Air Force Academy so early on. Describe, if you would, what it was like showing up on campus at the Air Force Academy when it's, as you said, 5 years old at this point. What was it like to show up as a new cadet at the zoo?
Again, I'm not sure I remember. I was probably in shock. No, I had heard enough about West Point and the Beast Barracks and all that, and I was forewarned. So we didn't have movies like we have today and all the things you can go get off the net to anticipate what's going to happen to you. But so I was a little surprised, a little shocked, yes. Everybody hollering at you, cutting all your hair off. I guess the biggest thing that left an impression early on, and still does to this day, is they wouldn't let us eat. I was back in the day when that was part of the regime, is to, they would put a meal in front of you, but you'd only get to eat a half or a third of it, and then you're off next duties. I think I lost 30 pounds that summer from when I entered right off the track team at high school, and at 205 pounds, and then I ended up at 176. So it was trying physically.
And there are the negative parts, which is it's such an adjustment. But then the positive parts, what do you think that, and I'm skipping ahead, making you look forward also, but what do you think that the Air Force Academy prepared you to deal with best? What do you think the Academy put into you overall that really helped?
Oh gosh, just perseverance. Just life is tough, and there are hard things going to happen, and you got to grit your teeth and get through it, one way or t'other. And I would say that's probably the biggest thing. And kind of the second, which also comes from the Air Force more in general, is that the Air Force gives you a different job every time you turn around. And if you're not convinced that in 6 months you're not going to be the best guy at that job, then you got a problem. I mean, you're kind of behind the power curve before you ever start. So that has to be your attitude, and that's probably not a bad attitude through life either.
So as you became a senior at the Air Force Academy, throw your hat in the air, and did the Thunderbirds fly over for your?
Oh yes.
Now, did you?
Yes.
Well,
we graduated at the stadium,
okay.
And I can't remember whether the first ones to do that or second. Anyway, the Thunderbirds did fly over, and Kennedy was our graduation speaker, President Kennedy, which was motivational, and that was cool. I'm sorry, you asked a question.
I was going to ask you a personal question. Just did you meet like many cadets? Did you meet your wife there, or was that later on?
No, I did. She's from Littleton, Colorado, and we met, dated off and on for a while, and then yes, got married that first year, and still married, 4 kids.
Those Colorado girls, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask that is because every Air Force journey is not solo. There's so many times when you rely on your wife and the community at large. So anytime you want to interject on and my wife and I talked about that, or my family and I talked about that, by all means, add that in there. So you're a brand new, impervious to anything second lieutenant. You graduated from the Air Force Academy. What was your first assignment? What did you go to first in the Air Force?
Pilot training down at Williams Air Force Base, and T-37s, T-38s. And that was a bit of a shock, just number one, as hot as it was, but in the summer, but the responsibility of doing that airplane, of taking it on yourself, because in those days we didn't get any pre-flight training in a light airplane or anything else. So other than a couple rides I had an F-104 and F-100 ride and a couple T-bird rides, that was the first exposure to it, was jumping a Tweety bird and away you go.
And do you still remember your first time as the solo when you get to do your pattern only ride?
I can remember it happening, but I don't remember any highlights from it. I mean, it was just another flight. I mean, it was okay. I was ready, I guess, is the point. I wasn't too nervous about it or anything.
And did your classmates throw you into the pogo pool afterward? Into the wet pool?
Yeah, they had a pool out behind the squadron.
Yeah, so good. So those traditions have been around for a while.
Oh, yeah.
That's good to hear. Checking focus, looking at everything. It's great. Good. Well, one of the main questions I have, after you've grown up, you had obviously that incredible background with relatives, but then once you're in the Air Force, now it's up to you to say, I'm going to swim hard, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to get the job done. What was the motivation for you to do well? I mean, is it because you had a bunch of peers around you who are all surging to be the best, or is it just in your heart, or what was motivating you to work hard and not just get the job done?
I think it was just, me doing the best job I could. Wanting to do the best job I could. Didn't feel competition in terms of I got to do it better than George or anything like that. Clearly, that's got to be part of it in the sense that he's there. But no, I just do my own thing. Yeah.
Job done. Okay, and then what was the world situation at this time? So you're at in Arizona getting your pilot's wings, your silver wings. What's going on around you in the world at this time?
Well, of course, Kennedy got assassinated while we were there in pilot training. Not it was just a shock, but anyway, when we first went to the Air Force Academy as doolies, by the way, back then, as you may or have already been told, you didn't go home. You reported in June of '59, and you didn't leave until June of '60. You stayed there through Christmas and everything else, which was not fun. Anyway, but one of the things they did do in that summer, particularly, they showed movies on Sundays. And we all used to go up to Arnold Hall, and they would show films, but they were always Air Force films. And they were from back in the day when SAC was king. And so Bombers B-52 or some of those shows is what we got to watch. So I will admit I was very brainwashed to want to go to SAC when I was starting in pilot training. But after flying formation in the T-37, and then they had some ex-fighter pilot IPs, guard guys that had stayed in after they got called up for, the Berlin blockade or whatever they got called up for. But anyway, they used to go out and fight each other or tell us what to do as they fought each other with our T-38s. So anyway, now that absolutely convinced me that fighters was the way I wanted to go. So.
And you did get a fighter.
I was fortunate enough to do that. Yeah, I think I was looking. My class only got two front seat fighters, if you will, a 106 and F-105, and then a few of us got backseat F-4s. So that was good.
And you wrote that you were very glad about that.
Because the next thing down was probably a C-124 or a B-52, or it would have been an IP in T-38s. I mean, or T-30, probably T-37s, which would have been okay. I mean, but that's not what I really wanted to do.
This is a front here.
I wanted to be in fighters. Yeah,
Well, and your first aircraft was the F4.
right.
Will you tell me about what was your first mission learning how to fly is one thing, but then becoming a valuable warfighter is a totally different thing. It's level 2.
Oh yeah.
How did you become a lethal part of the combat team? How did you become well, more importantly, how did you become a good squadron mate? How did you become a good kid?
Well, the F4 in those days was I won't say old enough, but it was we didn't have all the technology we have today. And so if you wanted to navigate someplace, you had to real time read off Latin lawn off the INS system and figure out where that was on a map and what direction you had to go to get to the next place you wanted to go, unless you had pre-planned it. Intercepts, you had to manually find a target by searching with the elevation and range to find a target on the radar. Once you found one, you had to interpret what he was doing and where he was going with no necessarily output. I mean, no inputs additional from the outside. And then decide how you would attack him and how you would set up an intercept, all of which was very challenging. And that's kind of the backseater's primary duties in that day and age. Front seater he just flew the airplane, right, and set the switches to drop the bombs or shoot the missiles.
It sound cool on the radio.
Right. But we were not the first class of F4s. The first ones went through MacDill, but then they moved the RTU to right here to Davis-Monthan, and we had a lot of F-102 pilots that were coming in to be front seaters coming out of Germany because they were looking for pilots everywhere to fill all the seats. And they decided to put 2 pilots in the F-4 just to build up the pilot ranks of the Air Force, I guess. Anyway, so we were learning together, I guess you could say. And those guys knew a lot more about intercepts, so that was a big help, actually. But the kind of the ultimate value of the Gib was found, in my case at any rate, when we went to combat over in Ubon, and we're flying nights. Because now, not only are you doing all the navigation by radar or by INS and trying to tell him where to go, how to avoid the mountains, and how to go down this path rather than hit the mountain. And we had at least one crew that ran right into a mountain, just going to war. Wasn't even shot at yet. I mean, he wasn't in the combat area where the guns were. Anyway, and then you tell him where to drop flares, and that was the manual days when you physically had a flare pod. Drop a flare now, and this big flare. I don't know. They were 3 feet long and 10 inches around. They were big. Drop those babies, and they'd go off, and then you'd circle around and you'd look at the ground. Okay, now where am I? Am I where I think I want to be? Am I where I'm supposed to be to find that truck park or that road segment? And if you didn't, you said, no, that's not it, then you had to regroup and figure out, okay, Mr. Pilot, go left, or take this heading, let's go about 10 miles and try again. And that's what we did. And again, then look for the targets, find a target. Once we find one, then roll in, drop bombs on him or whatever. And 2 was back there. He'd see where you dropped and then also find the same target and do the same thing. But it was kind of all on the backseater's back to get at least that major part of the mission done. Since it was, and as I say, keep us safe. Flew a number of missions, a few up into the Route Pack 6, flying mid-cap for the F-105s. We'd get called off nights occasionally and support a big push up north. And again, there, find a target, figure out what he's doing. Can we intercept him? Try to intercept him, and then have somebody scream at you because you just went into the China buffer zone or whatever. But
Yeah. And then let me make sure I take good care of you here. Can I give you a little? Here, I'll give you one. Here, I'll open it. Here we go.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Getting dry.
That's right. Air Force Academy's down. Got to hydrate. Actually, they probably didn't let you guys drink water ever either.
Oh, he carried canteens everywhere we went. I remember that. Because it was the old-fashioned metal kind that bounced on your hip.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
We had the metal. No, they were plastic. We had the plastic, the green plastic. There we go.
Thank you.
So when you, and this is something that, take your time to remember if you want to, but when you would roll, so it's nighttime, you saw some tracers come up, you're going to roll in on a target. What were you hearing over the radio or over the intercom? Was there a lot of calls going back and forth, or did it get very quiet? What were you hearing and seeing at this time for a roll in?
Well, at night it was pretty quiet because it was usually just the two airplanes up there and in that package on that frequency at one time. We mostly flew in Route Pack 1 on the very southern part of North Vietnam, and then a lot in Laos, trying to get the Ho Chi Minh Trail and interdict that. But yeah, being night, you had the area to yourself because it's all you need to do is run into somebody. I guess that brings up, I'll get back to your question, but speaking of other airplanes, invariably it happened once a week or more. You'd be doing your thing, and all of a sudden there'd be a loud burst of light just off your side, and it'd scare the hell out of you because you thought somebody big was shooting at you or something, and then it would instantly compute that's a recce bird, an RF-104 or 101 in those days, popping flares, going down the road and taking pictures to take home. But you never knew where they were or that they were going to be there or anything. Anyway, that was fun. So, again, once you found a target that you wanted to hit, you knew what the altitude was because you knew where it was. You knew nighttime, pretty much 30-degree dives, not getting real high, real steep. And so you knew what you wanted to set as a base. And the guy in the front had to figure out what his offset was so he could get the right distance. If there's any wind, you had to figure kind of what that was. And then the mills were already set. Again, we had iron sights, nothing. You just flat had an iron sight. You set in a mill depression based upon a dive angle, a speed, and roll in and try to set that dive angle, that speed, and put the pipper on the target, and offset for wind, of course, and then pickle it off at the right altitude. And the back seater would help support the front seater with the numbers, and then call off the pickle altitude on the way down, and then remind him to pull out hard so he was.
And how low did you guys bottom out at from like the surface of the ground?
I don't remember. It's not.
5,000, 3,000?
Oh, no. I think 30 degree, 1,500 or so, I think. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't. But
a big deal at night. That's not that high.
Well, you got a flare. I mean, you're rolling in on a lighted landscape, and you know where the mountains are, so you're not going to worry too much about that, or you're going to come from a direction where you're avoiding them, part of the calculation. But that's the bad part about the flares. Good that you can see and find a target, which is the whole point, but then they can see you. And as soon as you get down the flare light, and we used to paint the bottoms of the airplane black, or the maintenance guys did, and just whatever black paint they could find, which would streak off. Much better than the white that they came from the factory with. Anyway, so when you were above the flare, they couldn't see you. very well, if at all. But once you rolled in, then yeah, they could eyeball you from the side or a lot of different directions. So yes, they would tend to shoot then.
And so most of the time you're able to come home and things were great. Did you ever have a problem or a direct engagement with the enemy that didn't go well?
Not really. No, we didn't. Had some front seaters try to kill me, but other than that, that's kind of a common occurrence. I say that didn't particularly go well. A quick war story. No, the flying not my regular IP, unfortunately, and our regular front seater went out, did our thing, and we did have a gun pod on the center line. And so he decided he wanted to shoot the gun pod before he went home. So he went out over the water, and there was trees where we knew the road was, and there was a suspected truck parked there. And he rolled in, was going to strafe it. Well, unfortunately, the sun was just starting to get light behind us in the west, and the east, and he rolled in. I reminded him, and anyway, he pushed right on in, strafing. And damned if we didn't get some 37 millimeter right by the canopy as we were pulling by. And he wanted to go like straight ahead toward home, and I bullshit. No, we're going to turn hard left because if one of those hits us, I want to be pointed to the water. And nothing hit us, thank goodness. But I said, I'm not going to fly with you anymore. Thank you very much. And the other, and this happened more than once, was you would be up there maneuvering, and often this was when you were number two, so you didn't really have control of your own flares, or the flares were not where you wanted them to be necessarily, or you were where that wasn't helping you, and somebody would decide to be watching and looking, and he'd be pulling the airplane and get too slow, too nose high. And the F-4, if you stall it at low altitude, it'll flip on you, and you're done. You're not going to recover it, is the point. So you're going to jump, and you're by definition below 10,000 feet, so no question about that. So I'd more than one or two, we call it a stick shaker, but we didn't have a stick shaker. You just feel the vibrations and stop, don't move. Okay, now recover, asshole. Jeez.
The original. Does the F4 have warning tones, or does it actually say like warning? Like it's just there's nothing.
Nothing. The only thing it has is an angle of attack, and you should be ahead of speed. So like horn speed's a circle.
Stall horn.
I don't remember one. No.
Yeah, I guess probably you need to have your RWR probably loud. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's well.
Me too.
But it's a happy story though, because you went from backseat to something better. Will you tell me about that move and what it felt like for you, the first air breather?
Well, another short aside. While we were over there, we were getting missions pretty fast, and that was the day when you got 100 missions over Laos, North Vietnam, then you go home, and they were happening so fast for a while till we had a bombing pause or we had some other incident. Another one of my classmates and I, we came up with the idea. We were both flying with IPs in the front seats, flight commander kind of guys, good guys. Talk to them. What if we upgraded in place here now? We know this mission better than even new guys coming in for sure, and just stay right here, upgrade in place. You're an IP, sign off 10 landings or whatever, and we're done. And they agreed. So we were actually starting to do that. Got a few front seat rides, and then the general from Saigon called and says, "No, we're not doing that." So Okay, back in the rat race again, but came out of there, went right back to Davis Montham here in Tucson and into the front seat conversion course or whatever they called it in those days, and then over to Germany for a 3-year tour in the F4Ds.
And what time frame was this?
Uh, so let's see, came back from Germany in December of '69, so went over there in '66, I guess. 3 years.
I mean, this is a big Cold War going on, obviously, with
Oh yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So now you're in a powerful aircraft, front seat in Europe. What was your mission and what was your role? How did your brain swap to the big Cold War effort? What did you do there on a day to day?
Well, it basically we trained to sit alert, nuclear alert. Strange as it seems, even recently in the papers here, I'm reading about a new bomb that's a new B-66 mod something that they just tested. It's been in the magazines here not too long ago. There's the same bomb we sat on over there in Ramstein in the late '60s. It was new then. It was the first dial a yield. You open a little panel and say, okay, set on A, B, C, D, or whatever, and you could actually dial whatever yield the planners wanted. I mean, we didn't pick it; we just set it. But yeah, sat nuclear alert was our primary job. We had 4 birds, 24 hours a day, week after week, month after month.
And without, and you can have some help from without being too fighter piloting about it, but just in a lovely big picture sense, how wonderful must it have been to be in Europe in the '60s or '70s? You know, you're getting paid. Most of the things are getting taken care of. What kind of fun stuff did you do out there? Did you go sightseeing or?
Oh yeah. Well, I had one kid before I was in pilot training. Had 2 more when we were in Germany, so my wife didn't get a chance to do too much. No, we took a few vacations in Rome and London and Amsterdam and that sort of thing, but not excessive. Just didn't have time and kids. Now the pilots, we used to just be forced to go off cross country to get hours on the birds and to go up to Denmark and land at a Danish base so they could practice turning F4s. And that gave a good excuse to go to Norway or Denmark or over to England and just for a weekend, for a night or 2. The other fun thing was to go down to Wheelis in Libya. Wheelis was an Air Force base. I don't know what it is. I mean, I assume it's still a base now, but back in the day, King Edred, is that the right one? Anyway, they were friends of ours, and so that's where we went for fair weather flying. So my poor wife would be home with 3 kids, and I'd be down on the beach when we didn't have to fly. But great flying, great range, great training. So,
and you obviously have been married this whole time, so it's okay to ask this question, hopefully. But how did your wife support? Did she ever just say like, "Can you find another job, please?" Or did she was say, "Let's keep doing this. This is tough, but I love it and I like what you're doing." How did your wife support you through that stuff or through that time?
She was 100% supportive. Yeah. Yeah, there's no question about that.
And when you left after Europe, where did you go after that?
Well, that's when I had the choice of either going to B-52s or volunteer to go back to Vietnam. So I went to the Aero Department, and they had given me a letter when I graduated and said, if you're ever interested, give us a call. So I did. And they said, we would absolutely love to have you, because they were losing their pilots to go to the war. And I'd already had a tour, so I was really a fat meat for them. So again, they sent me to get my master's degree in aeronautical engineering, and then come back and teach there.
And did you share the war stories with the cadets there to make sure that they
Oh,
understood?
yes. Yeah. No, that was the part my challenge was to teach the lowest sections in the base core aero programs. Every cadet had to take 2 semesters of aero, the thermal and aero. And I always taught the low sections because that was the challenge, to get them interested and get them to learn and enjoy it. And again, this is part of your heritage, part of what you're getting in the military for. So that was good.
And then you also got to do the T-33 to do the incentive. That's an interesting thing to me. Will you tell me about the T-33?
Okay. Oh yeah. Well, the T-41 first. That's what they signed me up for when I first got there, to be an IP in the T-41, where all the senior cadets that were going to pilot training or wanted to go to pilot training had to go through T-41s and get solo and pass their check ride. They didn't necessarily get a license or anything, but they did all that, and that was a good program. So that was a lot of fun. Again, taking a kid and, okay, this is an airplane. Let's go fly. Yeah, that was great. But then I had to get jet qualified. So the T-33 orientation program was a really good one. Every cadet, the first Dooley summer, every cadet got a ride, 20-minute ride around Pikes Peak. And I think it was the next year we got a 1-hour ride, hop in Colorado, up around the mountains, just a ride. And then the next year, I guess it would be the junior year, got an out and back. And you really went to base ops and you planned a mission, and you went to, from Peterson Field out to Hill, for instance. Get a hamburger, go get the weather, file, and then come back again. And he could fly the whole, most of the time. So yeah, those were fun times. And then quite regularly on the weekend, another IP and I we'd go someplace, build up flying time. So yeah, it was a shame they lost those bennies, I guess you'd call them.
Yeah, I was there during the T3 era, so there was just either minimum and then no more than 3.
Oh.
And I'm sorry, and then you went to the T-33 after the T-41.
Right.
What was you were talking about? What was the main part of what you did with the T-33? Was it just to requal in jets, or what was that for?
Well, it got me requalled in jets. I was still teaching at the academy then. I spent, like I say, 3 years there. First year and a half, extra duty T-41, and the next year and a half T-33s. So I was still a full-time teacher, and I was squadron academic officer for a classmate of mine who was the AOC, and I stayed busy and involved. It's good.
That's cool. And at what point did you just say the Air Force is great, but I'm ready to move on to something else? At what point did you have that conversation?
Well, that's a longer story. The short version is after the academy, got qualified, went back down to Luke, then got F4s, went over to Thailand again for a second tour, if you will. Although, again, it was not no war at that point in time, so basically sitting alert. Came back, went to Luke, and back to Luke again, and an IP, and was made an ops officer. About a year and a half into that, I was on vacation in San Antonio, and one of our IPs, not a full-time IP, was up with a 4-ship, and they did a maneuver and didn't recover and killed themselves, both student and good friend of mine, as a matter of fact. Well, the upshot of that in that day and age was that I got fired, the squadron commander got fired, the wing ops officer got fired, and got a lousy ER, got passed over, contested that ER finally with a whole bunch of evidence that was absolutely valid and got the ER removed. So I ended up making lieutenant colonel 1 year late. And I also found a job at the Pentagon just so I could get out of because I obviously was not going to, TAC was no longer an option for me to make a career in. And that had been my goal all along. So I went to the Pentagon and enjoyed that. And then said, okay, 20 years, am I going to see if I make colonel and hang around or look for another job? So I was 4 years in the Pentagon, 20 years in the Air Force, hit at the same time. So I looked at my options and said, gee, I have these options to go with Raytheon or Hughes or Ford Aerospace since I was working with their people out of the Pentagon in the missile business. So it was a pretty easy decision for me personally.
Yeah. So you entered the Air Force Academy in 1950.
59.
59, sorry. Okay, 59. And then your last day was what year?
Well, graduated in 63, so 20 years later, 83, June 83.
Okay.
Retired.
So Reagan was in his first term. Cold War was still. Cold War was still.
Is this a test? No.
No, no test. I just like to put it in context of what's going on all around. So you're getting out into the economy that's starting to grow in the defense industry in general. You mentioned being able to work on AMRAAM in the write-up.
Oh, yes.
But before I jump to anything after that, looking back at an Air Force career of 20 years with a lot of aviation, F4, being one of the big beefy jets that you flew, what was a highlight for you? What was the thing that you just think back and that's something the Air Force really got right? That's something that was really enjoyable, whether that was just people around you at a place, whether that was a certain mission. What was a highlight about being in the Air Force or being a pilot?
Well, I think, I enjoy the pilot, enjoy the flying, and enjoy that, the challenges there too. But I think the highlights are really the squadrons, the groups, the teammates, the camaraderie, just being with, living with a team, a group that you enjoy. That's probably the thing that sticks out. And back in those days, more than this day and age, as I watched my son and all, the squadron was much more cohesive. Wives didn't work. Not that they couldn't, maybe some did, but it's just, that's not the society that it was at that point in time. And so the wives club, everybody got together. You got together almost weekly or all the time. Took care of each other, took care of people. All the lieutenants would make captain and hire a train and a boat and go up in Germany and have a all-day party. Just a whole bunch of stuff like that tended to keep the system, keep the people integrated, keep everybody was involved and enjoying what they were doing. I think. I certainly was.
Yeah, and of the fun things they were able to do, here, over there, even at the academy, is there any one person that was like, your bud or your friend, someone you'd always keep in touch with from pilot training, or did you have someone that you kind of went through this experience with?
Not. A few of my classmates that ended up in F4s with me and all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, they really haven't followed them in the last 20 years much. One case, real good roommate, best man in a wedding and all that. He just doesn't want to be in contact. That's what he's doing. Anyway, it's so no, I can't say that there's.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes there are, and sometimes there aren't. And then my almost last question is, if I were to go to your house right now, Do you have the standard one each knickknacks from Germany, from Bitburg, from or the different places where do you have souvenirs from your time in the Air Force, or are those all put into a box somewhere?
We've got a bedroom that we made into an office, and I've got my hero wall, all the way around. That's where the picture came off the wall, as a matter of fact, and pictures from not only the Air Force but also Hughes/Raytheon are involved in that. Around the house itself, not so much our stuff, although there's a brass rubbing framed on the wall that we got in England, or that I made in England, actually. Got some stuff for my son and his flying that we've put up on one place or another, pictures and what have you.
Yeah.
But not so as you'd say that this guy spent 5 years in Japan and 3 years in Germany, that sort of stuff.
Okay. And if there was one, like desert island is, so like, what's the one thing you would take if you had to go to an island? If there was one memento or one scrapbook or, a helmet, if there was one thing that you would take from all of that as your most prized memento from being in the Air Force, do you have something like that?
No, I don't think so. Not a favorite one. Not one. Not one. I mean, they all bring back. In fact, getting ready for this and thinking about it and looking at the pictures and okay, what was it? Yeah, okay, I remember that now. And pictures on the wall of the entire squadron hanging all over an F4. I counted 46 people. I said, good Lord, that's a lot of people.
And let me just do that. Let me actually grab that. So, if you would, you can just hold it there. So, will you just tell me about that? Let me make sure I'm focused on that. On there. This is great, by the way. That's perfect. And maybe just a little angle to the right. Good, perfect. Right there. Good. Okay. Will you tell me about what you're wearing there and where that is?
Well, this is in Ubon, Royal Thai Air Force Base. I'm sorry, Udorn, Royal Thai Air Force Base in the northern part of Thailand. And this is where I went after out of the academy. Got back in F4s. Went over there in October of '74. Was there through August, I think it was, of '75. And the airplane in the back is the F4E Tizio, which you can see the big TV screen there hanging off the front of the wing, or TV camera. And you literally had a telescope that you could aim and track targets with to better ID them. Anyway, we sat Air Alert, and this was our Air Alert outfit with a vest with. I don't think we carried a gun on normal day-to-day operations over there. I don't remember that. But radios for survival and survival gear, and G-suit and all that.
Yeah, and then the patch, if you'll point to the patch on there and tell me
Yeah.
what squadron is that there?
That's the 25th Squadron. We actually were in the building that the Triple Nickel had been in, which was a F4 outfit that did well over there back in the day, back when the war was going on. But then they deployed back to the States, and then actually they ended up transitioning to F-15s, and they were already at Luke when I got there. We even shared a building with them with my squadron, 426th.
And my last question about the pictures: do you have any of those G suits saved, or flight suits, or did you get rid of them all?
No G suits. I had some flight suits. I'm not sure that they're not sure they fit or that they're wearable anymore. But kids have used them for Halloween and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Had a helmet, but oxygen mask got lost someplace by one of the kids taking it out on Halloween, I think it was.
Yeah, no, that'll happen. So there's probably
but they
Tootsie
fall
rolls
apart.
and candy all in there. Put that down. And so my last question is more just about a philosophy on doing stuff when you don't feel like doing it. The harder missions, the tougher things to do. What do you think is the value of pushing through things when it's not the easiest thing to do? And specifically thinking about on a mission, sometimes you'd rather just turn around and go. You know, what is it in you that says, no, we have to do that? Where do you think that that comes from?
Boy. Yeah, I'm not sure. Other than that's your duty. That is what you signed up to go do. That's your job. If you can't do that, you might just as well not be there. We did have a few of those up in North Vietnam where they even tried to send us out at night to circle around north of Hanoi and find a railroad bridge up there at night and drop a flare on it and try to hit it. And that's kind of silly, but we tried. I'm not sure we hit anything, but
Gave it a good color.
oh yeah.
That's good. And if a bunch of, well, and your son, you said, is a pilot.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And
yeah.
what does he fly?
Well, he mostly flew F-16s for years and years and years. His last tour was his last tour was in 10th Air Force headquarters in Fort Worth. Before that, he was the group commander, 377th, I think it is, the reserve wing group in Alaska that had an F-22 squadron. So he flew F-22s.
Oh, I may have run into this person. Is he still in Alaska?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. He left there about a year and a half ago.
Okay, I was there about 2 years ago. Was he reservist at the time?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's
I went up and filmed with the reserve.
he's been a full-time reservist for his whole career,
I'll have
actually.
to go look at the film and see if I see any name tags on that. That'd be hilarious if I got to actually meet your son up there.
Yeah.
Because I filmed 2 years ago in March. Anyways, okay, I'll look for that. Well, and this is my closing shot. If a bunch of kids came up to you and they're looking at the F4 Phantom and they're looking at you and they say, "We really want to be pilots," what would you say to them to encourage them in a career of aviation?
Oh gosh.
How would you describe the joy of flying?
Well, it's like if you're happy just driving your sedan down the street or driving your bus or your truck, that's fine. But if you would wish you could drive a sports car and really race in some competition around a difficult track, then that's what fighter pilots do. The flying, just the cruising is nice. You get to see neat things. It's great to look at the world from up there. But in terms of the challenge and the personal satisfaction, it's mastering the big beast and then accomplishing something with it.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for your time.